Kelvin, a completely unlucky guy in his previous life, ended up being run over by the famous Truck Kun and was lucky enough, or fate, to be saved by a goddess named Melfina, who offered him a new chance to live in another world. He woke up in the middle of a silent forest, lying under a tree, with absolutely no memory of his previous life. He was lost, not knowing who he was or what was happening, until a kind of menu appeared before him, and he began to speak. The voice explained that he had been reborn in a universe full of magic and fantastic creatures, and that he now had the option of continuing as an adventurer. Curious, Kelvin looked at his stats and discovered that he had chosen the Summoner class, a support class. He seemed quite happy with this choice and decided to head to the nearest town with the idea of joining a guild and beginning his journey as an adventurer. On the way through the forest, the voice on the menu revealed her true identity. She was Melfina herself, the goddess who had given him this new chance. Once inside the city, surrounded by the hustle and bustle of the place, Melfina told him that Kelvin's memory loss was a consequence of the rebirth process. After his death, he had chosen several abilities, and among them was the ability to summon her. Melfina then decided to accompany him personally in this new life. Kelvin wanted to know why he still couldn't see her, and she explained that, at the moment, he didn't have enough mana points to do so. Upon arriving at one of the city's guilds, Kelvin was greeted by a receptionist, who handed him a form to fill out. When he was about to write down his true class, Melfina interrupted him, explaining that being a summoner was something very rare. He might be the only one in the entire kingdom. Revealing this information could put him in danger. Kelvin then decided to declare himself as a mage. He received his adventurer's card, classified as rank F. The receptionist explained that he would need to complete 10 quests to increase his rank. She showed him several quest options, and Kelvin chose to face slimes in the forest to test his summoning skills. Before leaving, he spent the little money he had on an old wooden wand and went straight into the forest, looking for experience and some reward. After walking for a while, he spotted some slimes and hid in the bushes. He analyzed their status and realized that they were quite weak. He thought he could deal with them without magic and decided to face them physically. He jumped out of the bushes and attacked with his wand, but the slimes were quick and dodged. One of them hit his chest and threw him back. Kelvin got up and tried again, but was hit by 3 attacks in a row and fell again. With effort, he got up once more and went for them. His wand moved quickly and finally landed a second blow that left one of the slimes almost lifeless. He approached, held out his hands, and the magic activated. The contract was signed. Successfully, he summoned the slime and named it Clotho. Soon after, he said that together they would hunt more slimes. Late in the afternoon, they encountered another group of slimes. They approached cautiously through the bushes. Kelvin instructed Clotho to take care of the one on the right while he took on the other. The two jumped out of the bushes, and Kelvin used wind magic to cut down his enemy. Clotho, in turn, delivered a series of stylish boxing blows before taking down her target. Kelvin was impressed by Clotho's strength and checked her stats in the menu. Even though she was only level 1, her stats were incredible. Melfina explained that this was because Kelvin was the only SS rank summoner in that world, and that was why his summoned creatures were so powerful. While they were talking, Clotho encountered another slime and defeated it alone, but was soon called back by Kelvin into his sort of Pokeball. Back in town, they sold the slime cores and made enough money for a decent meal and a place to sleep. As he passed through an alley, Kelvin saw several beautiful girls wearing slave collars locked in cages. Among them was a rare half-elf who had recently been captured. Although he found the scene disturbing, Kelvin decided not to get involved and headed straight to an inn, where he rented a room for the night. Afterwards, he went downstairs for dinner, realizing that his new life was just beginning to take shape. He continued to face wolves, monsters, and even demons, with the firm goal of becoming the strongest of them all. After a few days, he completed his 10th mission. Back in the guild, he was promoted to rank E, which made many look at him with envy. Even so, he asked for a higher rank mission. Before the receptionist could answer, a blonde man named Cash appeared and suggested that he face the Black Knight. Cash claimed to be rank D and invited him to join his group. Kelvin, suspicious, checked the boy's stats and realized that he was lying. He declined the invitation and proposed a challenge. Whoever defeated the Black Knight first would win. Cash was surprised, but he accepted and left the guild. Kelvin suspected that he was going to set up a trap, but he decided to go anyway, to test his strength. Meanwhile, Cash went to an alley and found his partners, a blue-haired nerd and a huge brute. The brute complained that he wanted to beat someone up, and Cash responded with a malicious smile, saying that he already knew who the victim would be. They arrived at the Black Knight's castle and stormed the place, but found all the monsters already defeated. Kelvin emerged from the shadows and announced that they were too late. He explained that the knight was behind the door, but that in order to face him, they would have to get past him first. Cash was shocked, but he didn't have time to react. Kelvin taunted the brute, calling him a loser who had never gotten close to a girl. Furious, the big guy advanced, but Kelvin turned the ground into quicksand and trapped him. He then threw wind slashes, which were blocked by the brute, while the others barely managed to escape. The nerd became desperate and tried to run. Kelvin then summoned Clotho, now transformed into a gigantic monster, who ran after him to the hall. Days before, during a mission, Clotho had started acting strangely and evolved into a colossal creature. Melfina explained that he was now one of the most powerful summons in the world, capable of destroying even an entire country. Back at the castle, Clotho threw the nerd against the wall, defeating him easily. The brute tried to escape the trap, but was grabbed by Clotho before he could escape. Cash still tried to attack Kelvin, but was quickly defeated. With Clotho's help, Kelvin tied the three with ropes and ended the confrontation. As soon as the door opened, Kelvin found an imposing knight holding a huge sword. Instead of going into a direct confrontation, Kelvin decided to try to capture him. But the knight, showing no hostility, refused immediate combat and suggested that they talk. During the conversation, he said that he had served several kings throughout his life, and even offered Kelvin an old candy that he still carried. Without beating around the bush, Kelvin asked if he would accept a contract. The knight responded with some irony, saying that he had no better commitments at the moment, but that he would only accept if he was defeated in a fair fight. As night fell, the two prepared themselves. The battle began with Kelvin advancing quickly and launching wind slashes, which had no effect. Clotho tried to surprise her opponent from behind, but was easily captured. Kelvin used earth magic to create a distraction, giving Clotho a chance to break free. The knight then launched a powerful aerial strike, which Kelvin barely managed to dodge. He responded with a technique that cracked the ground, but the result was the same: ineffective. Another aerial slash followed, and Clotho launched herself into direct combat to divert the enemy's attention. Meanwhile, Kelvin activated a trap, a gravity-boosting spell that glued the knight's feet to the ground. For a moment, he thought the fight was over, but the knight broke through the magic and advanced with brutal attacks. Kelvin defended himself as best he could, using earth magic to dodge. The enemy was closing the distance with each passing second, until Kelvin, in a last attempt, resorted to the gravity spell again to slow down his opponent. At that moment, Sarah appeared in front of him and launched a solar ray, knocking the knight away. The next morning, Kelvin showed up at the guild, carrying the Black Knight's broken helmet. He was greeted with applause, especially for having caught Cash and his gang red-handed. They were all arrested. After that, he went upstairs to his room. There it was revealed that he had, in fact, managed to sign a contract with the Black Knight. On his way to his well-deserved rest, he noticed that there was an older man waiting for him. The man introduced himself as Leo, the guildmaster, and got straight to the point. He asked if Kelvin came from another world. The question caught him off guard. Kelvin immediately checked his own status. It was true. Leo was a very high level and could probably see through his real identity. The two sat down to have tea, and Leo said that he had heard from one of the receptionists that Kelvin had not only captured Cash's gang, but had also defeated the Black Knight single-handedly. It was then that Leo confidently stated that Kelvin was a summoner. Kelvin was surprised again. He thought about denying it, but he remembered what Melfina and the Black Knight had said. Sooner or later, this would come to light, so he decided to be honest. Calmly, he confirmed that it was really the summoner, as there was no point in hiding it anymore. Then he asked a question. If Leo knew about Cash and his gang, why didn't he do anything? Leo calmly explained that Cash belonged to a noble family from another kingdom, and that without concrete evidence, he couldn't interfere. Then he added that he wasn't Kelvin's enemy. On the contrary, he wanted to be his ally. He said that he had met other people from another world, and some of them had even become heroes of a neighboring kingdom. Hearing this, Melfina remembered that she had been the one who reincarnated them, and promised to tell them later. Leo also commented on a recent prophecy that spoke of the return of the Demon King. He said that because of this, the monsters were more aggressive and dangerous. He asked Kelvin to help protect the city from these smaller monsters, while the heroes dealt with the Demon King. Kelvin, always cautious, wanted to know what he would get in return. Leo promised to promote him directly to the adventurer's ranks, granting him freedom to choose any mission. He also guaranteed his full support and would keep his secret. Kelvin agreed to the terms and was then promoted to the BGR rank of adventurer. Later at the inn, he had lunch and took the opportunity to ask Melfina about the reincarnated heroes. She explained that, not so long ago, 4 people from Japan had been run over by Truck Kun, and so she decided to reincarnate them as heroes to face the Demon King. After lunch, Kelvin took the money he had saved and left. Melfina, curious, wanted to know what he intended to do with that amount. Kelvin, with a smile on his face, said that he was going to buy a slave. Passing through the same street as before, he saw the cages lined up. Suddenly, a man ran past, completely engulfed in flames. The keepers quickly put out the fire. It was an angry customer who quickly left. The keeper explained that one of the slaves was cursed and would burn anyone who tried to touch her. Kelvin looked in the indicated direction and was surprised to see a half-elf. Checking her status, he decided he wanted to buy her. The keeper tried to warn him about the curse, but he didn't care and paid the amount asked. The girl looked scared, with her hands tied, but she followed Kelvin anyway. Sometime later, he tried to get closer, and she backed away, saying that she didn't want to hurt anyone because of the curse. Kelvin calmed her down and gently touched her head, using SS rank magic to undo the spell. The girl was paralyzed for a moment. When she realized that she was free, she began to cry and thanked him. She said that her name was Ethel, and that she had been sold into slavery shortly after birth. Kelvin promised to protect her and took her to the inn, asking the lady who ran the place to prepare food for them. The lady looked at the girl suspiciously, but when she found out that she was a slave bought by Kelvin, she decided to give her a full bath. Kelvin waited at the table. After a while, the lady returned with Ethel already clean and dressed in maid's clothes. They had dinner together and went to the bedroom. There, Kelvin explained everything to Ethel and introduced her other summons. They checked her status, increased her levels, and when night fell, everyone decided to rest well for the next adventures. Kelvin had been adventuring for a few months now, and now the group was acting much more harmoniously. Ethel had reached the peak of her archery skills, and with her fire magic, she was able to defeat enemies with just one shot, which was very useful, since Kelvin, Clen, and Greed fought at close range, and she was the only one who attacked from afar. After defeating a monstrous tree, they returned to the guild. The receptionist congratulated them and explained that with one more mission, Kelvin would rise to AR rank, and Ethel would earn her B rank card. She told them to prepare for the exam, but assured Ethel that there was no need to worry. Last time, she had used invisibility and easily defeated the instructor, securing her C rank. While still at the guild, the receptionist named Anne invited them to visit a newly opened bakery. They accepted. The next morning, they went to the market and had fun tasting the sweets. It was then that a group of rude nobles appeared and kicked over their table. Kelvin, surprised, asked what was wrong, and one of the henchmen shouted that they were in front of the third prince of the neighboring kingdom. The prince, who was fat and arrogant, began to provoke Kelvin, demanding that he hand over the girls for a day or two if he wanted to be forgiven. Feeling indignant, Kelvin rushed forward and threw one of the purple-haired henchmen against the wall, which left the others very scared. Then he did the same with the other henchmen, leaving only the ugly and fat prince. Kelvin then used his gravity magic to hold the prince in place and asked why he was in that country. The prince refused to answer at first, but with more pressure, he ended up confessing that he was there to meet the guildmaster, Leo. He had heard about a new, very strong adventurer who used that guild as a base and wanted this adventurer to work for him, to gain glory and be seen as worthy of the throne. Kelvin stated that he himself was that adventurer and that he would never serve someone as pathetic as him. After that, the group returned to the guild to rest. The next morning, Melfina arrived with news. She had discovered what the heroes were up to and brought their stats to Kelvin for analysis. He commented that their levels were very low, especially considering they had been reincarnated for a year. Melfina explained that this was worrying because the Demon King might resurface soon, and the heroes were still far from strong enough to face him. In comparison, Kelvin and his group had only been in the guild for a little over a month and were already much stronger, with advanced equipment. While they were examining their equipment, the innkeeper knocked on the door to tell him that Leo wanted to speak with Kelvin. He went to the guild, where Leo told him that a group of adventurers had discovered a secret room in a cave where there was an extremely powerful demon, classified as S rank. This shocked Kelvin, as he had never faced such a strong enemy. But since no one in the guild was capable of facing the challenge, Kelvin accepted the mission. Later that day, Kelvin and his group arrived at the site, only to find ER, the instructor who administered the EFL exam, standing there. He greeted them and asked if they had come to solve the quest. Kelvin asked if there had been any progress, and ER honestly replied that they had no idea how strong the demon was. So he created a protective barrier around the cave so that no one would get hurt by accident. ER led them to a cabin with a door in the floor, through which Kelvin and his group descended. They followed dark and damp caves, which looked scary, but surprisingly, Kelvin did not feel the presence of any life form in the place. They continued walking until they reached a large gate. Kelvin asked everyone to stop, as he now felt the presence of not one, but two demons in the room. Everyone got ready and opened the gigantic door, revealing a room full of skulls and completely dark. They advanced until they saw, on the altar, a demonic girl named B. This surprised Kelvin, but before he could think of anything, a voice came from behind them. When they turned, they saw a demon who introduced himself as the Archdemon Victor. A shiver ran down Kelvin's spine as he realized that this demon was undoubtedly an S rank. Even so, he remained calm and asked who the girl was. Victor simply closed the door and the room lit up completely. He explained that the girl on the altar was the daughter of the former Demon King. The news came as a shock, since not even Melfina knew that the last Demon King had a daughter. Victor continued saying that he had killed all the monsters in the area so that the humans could easily reach that room. Without saying anything else, he charged towards Kelvin. Fortunately, Gerard managed to block the blow with his shield, but was pushed back by the enemy's overwhelming strength. Kelvin quickly used a gravity spell to trap Victor and asked him what he wanted. Victor revealed that he was sealed, and that only humans could unseal him. When he did, he would devour the Demon King's daughter and become the most powerful demon of all, the next Demon King. With that, he broke the gravity spell and prepared to kill Kelvin and his group. However, instead of feeling fear, Kelvin was excited, as he had never faced such a strong enemy. Victor was confused by Kelvin's reaction, who seemed more excited than scared. He then used dark magic to create a legion of undead that emerged from the skulls and attacked the group. Kelvin used his wind slash to fight the monsters, while Gerard cut them down with his sword. But he warned Kelvin that their numbers could be a problem if they weren't careful. Gerard used his special attack, Aerial Slash, to eliminate several monsters, but they seemed to multiply like ants, attacking the group without stopping. Victor watched, surprised and impressed, because they fought in perfect synchrony. Kelvin approached and asked Victor if he wanted to fight now. Upon hearing this, Victor laughed and punched the ground, creating a cloud of smoke that covered everything. Kelvin warned Gerard to remain calm, as the enemy was underground. As soon as Victor tried to attack, Gerard blocked it with his shield, surprising Victor. Gerard counterattacked, but Victor escaped and attacked Kelvin, who managed to dodge. Victor reappeared before the Black Knight, and the two engaged in a fierce duel. In the end, Victor won and threw Gerard away. Kelvin began to worry, but before he could react, one of the demonic arms attacked him, forcing him to defend himself and dodge. Victor appeared behind him and tried to attack, but Clotho appeared and blocked the blow, saving Kelvin's life. Surprised by the appearance of a new summon, Victor tried to knock Clotho down, but she dodged while Kelvin took advantage of the distraction to use immobilization magic on one of the demon's arms. Gerard rushed to attack, but Kelvin stopped him, as Victor was breaking free from his bonds. Kelvin cast a reinforcement spell on Gerard's sword and urged him to attack, but Victor just smiled, as he already had his hand behind Kelvin, ready to strike him. At that moment, Kelvin shouted for Eiffel to reveal herself, and to Victor's surprise, she appeared behind him with a loaded arrow and fired. Victor managed to recover his arm and block the attack, but suffered great damage. Gerard took advantage of the gap and cut off one of the enemy's arms. Kelvin ordered everyone to retreat, while Victor began to laugh madly and announced that he was going to assume his final form. His body began to transform into a giant demon. Kelvin tried to stop the transformation before it was complete, using his Earth Slash, a flaming arrow, and Gerard's aerial slashes, but it was too late. Victor assumed his final form, and his armor blocked all the damage. He went on the attack. Kelvin created a magical wall, but it was easily destroyed. Gerard tried to intercept the blow with all his strength and tried to push him away, but the demon overcame him, knocking him down and preparing to deliver the final blow. Eiffel launched a rapid series of arrows, diverting Victor's attention for a moment. This was enough for Gerard to get up and advance with a swift sequence of sword strikes. To everyone's surprise, Victor proved to be extremely fast and skilled, dodging and blocking each attack. Suddenly, Eiffel started firing arrows again, and while Victor tried to deal with her, Clotho appeared out of nowhere, launching several cursed swords that forced him to retreat, pushed back. At that moment, Kelvin seized the opportunity to cast one of his most powerful spells, accompanied by flaming arrows and a concentrated solar beam. The energy hit Victor directly in the chest, throwing him against the wall with such force that the ground shook and part of the ceiling collapsed. To Kelvin's surprise, Victor used his body as a shield to protect the Demon King's daughter, who was nearby, from a huge block of stone. Soon after, Victor fell to the ground, defeated. Kelvin approached, curious, and asked why Victor had risked his life to protect the girl. It was then that Victor revealed the truth. He had been one of the most faithful followers of the former Demon King. His mission was to protect the existence of the king's daughter, keeping her hidden so that neither heroes nor enemies could find her. Victor was the one who taught the girl how to fight, read, and everything she needed to know, in that same castle that had now been transformed into a dungeon. But Judgment Day arrived. The humans came in droves, accompanied by countless heroes. Knowing there would be no escape, the Demon King gave Victor his final task, to ensure his daughter survived. He placed a seal on her that could only be broken by a human with a pure heart. With his dying breath, Victor asked Kelvin to take the girl to his group and show her the world, for all she had known so far was pain and destruction. After telling this, Victor passed away. Kelvin walked to the altar and broke the seal, taking the girl out of her coma. She seemed to understand everything that had happened and began to cry while Kelvin tried to calm her down. After a while, everyone left the dungeon and found ERD waiting for them. He asked what had happened inside, and Kelvin, without revealing the truth, said that the girl was possessed by a demon, but that they managed to defeat it and save her. Kelvin handed over a piece of Victor's armor as proof of victory, and then the group set off. Later, at the top of a mountain, Kelvin reflected on the risks. If anyone found out that this girl was the daughter of the Demon King, it could cause a lot of trouble. The girl, now calmer, introduced herself as S. She asked if he really wanted a demon in the group, and Kelvin, with a smile, made it clear that he would not miss the chance to build a harem and conquer some demons. She commented that it was impressive how he had defeated Victor, one of the most powerful demons of his time, and asked who he really was. Kelvin replied that he was no hero, just an ordinary adventurer who liked to fight. After that, Kelvin asked S if she was ready to leave with them. She was hesitant, as she had never left the mansion where she lived, much less visited a city. Fortunately, Ephil and the others reassured her, explaining that everything would be amazing, and soon S was excited to accompany the group. When they arrived in the city, everything was new to her. Every detail caught her attention, from the fruit vendors and merchants to the blacksmiths and fountains scattered throughout the square. Kelvin asked Eiffel to look after her while he went to the guild. When he opened the door, he discovered that a surprise party was being prepared for him, in celebration of his promotion to AR rank adventurer. The night was filled with food, drink, and fun, and everyone ended up sleeping soundly, ready for the next adventure. A few days after meeting S, she finally felt comfortable in the group. To improve the team's performance, Kelvin decided to learn the art of forging and created incredible armor, as well as bracers for Sarah, a new sword for Gerard, and a special item for Ephil. He was exhausted after all that work and decided to rest. It was then that he remembered. Since he arrived there, he had only eaten bread, not even a grain of rice. Determined, he began researching where he could find rice, and after a few days they planned a trip to a kingdom called Toraj. They continued their journey by wagon, which was something new for S, who continued to be enchanted by every sight she saw, from the river to the boats crossing the water. Suddenly the wagon stopped. They had been ambushed by a group of thieves. A blue-haired woman, apparently the leader, ordered the coachman to stop if he wanted to stay alive. She soon realized that Ephil and S were inside the wagon. Kelvin asked the coachman if he knew this group, and he explained that they were a famous gang in the Toraj region. Kelvin quickly assessed the level of the thieves and was disappointed. They were all below level 30. He told S that she could play with them if she wanted, but that she couldn't use the bracers because that would be unfair. S was a little disappointed, but she still got out of the wagon by herself, which surprised the thieves. The blue-haired leader laughed and ordered the men not to hurt the girls, as the boss wanted them in one piece. One of the thieves tried to attack S, but was knocked away with a single punch, which shocked the entire group. The leader insisted that it was luck. The thieves attacked together but met the same fate. One of them, a brute, tried to crush S with a huge hammer, but she stopped the blow with one hand and turned the attack on him, causing the brute to be hit by his own weapon. After that, Sarah tied everyone up with ropes. The leader kept talking too much and, like a classic blue-haired feminist, started yelling that their boss was level 70 and that he was going to kill them. Kelvin and S were unfazed and revealed that S was actually level 75, which finally made her stop talking. Eventually, the group arrived at the kingdom, and Kelvin noticed that the place reminded them a lot of ancient Japan. They walked around the city, and both Eiffel and S saw the sea for the first time. They went straight to the Adventurers Guild, where they were warmly greeted by a lady who said that Leo had already told her everything about them. She explained that she had once been part of the same group as Leo, which made Kelvin trust her. He told her about the thieves they had captured, and the lady took the matter seriously, explaining that the group was called the Black Wind. In the past, they had been defeated by AR-ranked adventurers who were now national heroes. According to her, these heroes had taken control of the group and were using it as a front for slave trafficking. Ephil said they should capture the group immediately, but the lady explained that it wouldn't be that simple. If they captured these national heroes, it could cause conflict between the government of Toraj and that of Parth, where they came from. As Kelvin thought about this, he noticed someone entering the city gates, and his suspicions were confirmed when he saw the heroes arriving. He told the guildmaster that if these heroes were the ones who defeated the thieves earlier, the people would be satisfied, and since they didn't belong to any government, there wouldn't be any problems. The guildmaster agreed and invited the heroes inside, explaining the whole situation. Meanwhile, Kelvin and his group invaded the thieves' hideout, broke down the door, and managed to knock one of them out. Inside, they found a strange man who was bothering some women, but Gerard didn't let him fight back, throwing him against the wall. Soon after, they opened another door where the leaders of the group were, and a fight began. The chief believed he was on the same level as the invaders, but Kelvin said that defeating that group was even easier than washing dishes. And with that, he launched a magical attack. At the same time, the group of heroes entered the dungeon and began walking through the corridors, looking for the enslaved people. They opened a door and found Clotho in front of the prisoners. One of the heroes drew his sword, but one of the enslaved girls ran to the slime and claimed that it belonged to the adventurers who had saved them. Still suspicious, they heard the girl's mother explain that AR-ranked adventurers had freed the group and left the slime there to protect them. She warned them that they needed to run to help the adventurers, as the leaders were experienced warriors. The heroes walked down the hallway to another room. They broke down the door and saw the real leaders lying on the floor, but they thought they were the AR-rank adventurers. Only then did they enter another room, where they found Kelvin and the others sitting in exaggerated poses. Kelvin pretended to be the villain and told the hero Toya that the AR adventurers had cried when they were defeated by him, and that he didn't even have to try. Toya drew his sword, followed by the girls in the group. Kelvin laughed and proposed a challenge. Whoever won could make the other obey any order. As they acted as one, the group of heroes accepted. Kelvin explained that he would face them all alone, and that they could use any strategy. Toya tried to argue that this was dishonorable, but the girls convinced him that Kelvin seemed very strong and that they should not underestimate him. Returning to his group, Kelvin revealed his plan: to use the heroes as witnesses against Kristoff and the thieves, so that the people of the kingdom would believe the story. In addition, he wanted to fight to test his strength and use his new secret equipment. The group of heroes cheered, activated their special abilities, and advanced against Kelvin, believing him to be a mage weak in hand-to-hand combat. However, Kelvin was much more powerful. He launched blasts that paralyzed Toya and a companion. A girl with long hair tried an aerial attack, but he dodged it, only to be attacked by the group's tamer, who was carrying a dragon in her backpack. The dragon released flames, but Kelvin used a magic that increased his speed and managed to escape. He appeared behind the white-haired girl and, with a touch of his special armor and using a skill called Skill Eater, which copies powers with a simple contact, stole her ability, causing her to faint. Toya tried to attack him, but Kelvin dodged and retreated. The girls quickly began to heal the cutie, while Toya continued to chase Kelvin and attack with his sword several times, but all the blows were blocked. Soon, Kelvin realized that Toya's sword skills were superior to his, and before long, a part of his wand broke when it collided with his sword. Toya continued to chase, but Kelvin simply disarmed his sword with a punch. This surprised him, but he kept attacking, while Kelvin blocked the blows with his bare hands and pushed him back. The girls were even more surprised because Toya had S-level sword skills, and yet Kelvin was able to face him without using weapons. Soon, Satsuna, the long-haired girl, decided to help, but Toya dodged the blow and retreated, raising a huge wall of earth in front of her. Satsuna used her special ability, which cuts through anything that gets in her way, and the wall was split in half with precision. Before she could recover, Kelvin prepared a powerful magic blast and launched it at her. But the attack was blocked by Toya, who took a lot of damage but managed to protect Satsuna. The group members worried about him, but Toya got up again, only to be slapped by Satsuna, which made him think a little more about himself. This left Kelvin a little disconcerted, and he stood still while the girls gave Toya a motivational speech, telling him that they could only move forward if they worked together. Kin asked if they were done talking yet, as he was starting to get bored. The heroes finally prepared to fight with a new spirit of unity when suddenly someone threw a flash grenade that completely blinded Kelvin. Nana, the tamer, immediately used her ice magic to try to freeze him, while Cutie cast a gravity magic to paralyze him. Toya and Satsuna rushed towards him with their swords drawn, forcing Kelvin to use explosive magic to create distance. Toya and Satsuna got up from the ground and saw Kelvin emerge from the dust cloud, completely unharmed. He commented that it was a good display of coordination and turned to Nana and Cutie, explaining that after casting restraining spells, they should have followed up with offensive spells, which would have made it much harder for him to escape and react to Toya and Satsuna's attacks. He then told Satsuna that her attacks were too predictable and that she needed to act more on instinct rather than overthinking. This angered Toya, who decided to use his special power, causing his sword to split in two. He began to spin the blades around with intensity, which inspired his classmates, who thought he was being very brave. Satsuna prepared to attack again, but Nana was faster and used her most powerful ice magic, causing several frozen spikes to appear under Kelvin, who was trapped and unable to move freely. At the same time, Cutie released her magic and created a huge golem, which charged a magic shot and launched it at Kelvin. Finding this interesting, he summoned his own golems, who blocked the attack while he asked them to buy him time. Kelvin began creating several magic circles around him at the same time, leaving the heroes scared and confused. Soon, Cutie realized that Kelvin was preparing a very powerful attack to free himself from the ice that trapped him. Satsuna wasted no time and went into the fight, cutting through the golems in her path and heading straight for Kelvin. However, before she could reach him, he cast his new spell, which caused several intense explosions, completely destroying the ice and freeing him. Satsuna had to retreat, but she didn't want to give up and return to the battle. Even so, Kelvin was faster. Before she could attack, he punched her in the stomach, knocking her to the ground. Suddenly, Cutie's ogre appeared on the scene, attacking Kelvin. The adventurer realized that the best way to win was to end whoever was controlling the ogre. So he jumped and hit Cutie, making her fall and destroying the ogre completely. Seeing this, Nana flew up with her little dragon and put on an ice armor to protect herself. But when she was almost close to Kelvin, he used the same magic he had used against Victor to completely paralyze her. Nana fell from the sky, powerless, and Toya managed to catch her in the air, put her on the ground, and turned his attention to Kelvin. Filled with rage, Toya began to attack wildly, but Kelvin blocked all of his blows with ease. As Toya prepared to deliver a final blow, Kelvin got past his defense with precision and applied an uppercut that knocked him out. After a while, Toya woke up and saw his companions looking at him, worried. Kelvin was sitting next to the enslaved girl. Toya tried to grab his sword, but realized that it was in her lap. Confused, he asked what was happening, and Kelvin finally explained that he was just an adventurer and that his group had saved the enslaved girls before they arrived there. Toya asked why they had to fight, but soon remembered that during the battle, Kelvin was always pointing out their mistakes, probably to train them. Toya apologized and bowed, asking Kelvin to teach him more about how to fight better as a team. The next morning, Kelvin met the guildmaster, who thanked him for capturing the Black Wind Thieves, saying that they were now trapped in a dungeon. The guildmaster asked if Kelvin was going to stay in the city, but he replied that he would probably leave soon, after getting some rest. After that, Kelvin, his group, and the heroes went to a cave by the sea, where Toya and her team faced a giant squid monster as training. Kelvin guided them, pointing out the mistakes of the group and its members, until the monster was dead on the ground. Then, everyone sat down for a picnic organized by Eiffel and began to eat. Toya told Kelvin how she had ended up in that world. According to him, she was in the classroom with her friends when everything began to shine, and they met a goddess named Melfina, who reincarnated them there. They woke up in a cathedral before a priestess who had been guiding them ever since. Toya spoke about the importance of taking care of oneself and not throwing oneself into danger just to save others. He apologized for his behavior and admitted that he had put the group in danger many times because of his hero complex. Suddenly, Satsuna returned, saying that she had caught a huge fish, but when she pulled out the water, she discovered that it was an S-rank water dragon. Satsuna began punching the dragon as if it were a joke, leaving Toya and the group shocked to see someone take on an S-rank monster so easily. Later that day, Toya and his group said goodbye, and Kelvin gave each of them a pendant he had made himself to wear as a good luck charm. Afterwards, the heroes boarded a ship and set off, while Kelvin and Gerard watched them. Kelvin told Gerard that he wanted to spend more time exploring the continent, and Gerard agreed. While they were talking, a messenger appeared with a message. The Queen of Taraj requested their presence at court. Wasting no time, they rushed to the castle. Kelvin was impressed by the grandeur of the place and the ancient architecture, which reminded him of Japan. Gerard mentioned that he had heard that the first emperor of that region was also a hero summoned from another world and brought several traditions from his country to transform the kingdom. Entering the castle, they took off their shoes and bowed before the queen. She told them not to worry about formalities and thanked them for their help in capturing the Black Wind Gang. She commented that she would normally organize a grand public ceremony to honor them, but since they were from Parth, this might cause trouble with the local population. She then asked Kelvin what he would like as a reward, promising to grant his request if possible. Kelvin replied that he knew that Toraj was growing a grain very similar to the rice of his world, and asked permission to buy this crop from her kingdom. The queen was surprised and asked why he was not asking for money, fame, or riches, but Kelvin said that he did not care about such things. He just wanted some rice for himself. The queen laughed and told him that he did not need to buy anything, that she would fill her cart with rice herself, and if he ran out, he would just write her a letter, and she would send more. After that, she held a small banquet for the heroes, and everyone ate a lot of rice along with traditional Japanese dishes, which were enjoyed wholeheartedly. A few days passed, and Kelvin was staying at the castle with his group as the queen's guest. Ifil arrived in his room and began preparing various Japanese dishes, impressing everyone with his A-level cooking skills. Kelvin started eating the rice balls when the queen came to try them too, saying that not even her chefs could make such delicious rice balls. She asked Kelvin if he would like to stay in Tage and work for her, but he politely declined, explaining that they were adventurers and did not usually work for anyone. The queen laughed and said that if he changed his mind, he would be welcome to work in Toraj. That night, everyone was preparing to return to Parth when the queen announced that they would be using a special means of transportation. They descended into the dungeon and saw a teleportation gate. She explained that this gate was connected to another in Parth, and that if they passed through it, they would be there instantly. Kelvin and his group bid the queen farewell and passed through the gate, finally returning to their hometown. The next morning, Kelvin sat at the table with a cup of tea and told Eiffel that he had bought a house for them. From now on, it would be their place to live. When everyone saw the huge mansion for the first time, they were excited and rushed to open the door. Inside, they also found the two slaves they had rescued from Tor Edge, Ellie and Luca, who would now work as servants in the new house. Sarah scurried off to find the largest room for herself, while Gerard went down to the cellars to prepare a training room. Ifil ran straight to the kitchen, and Clotho seemed enchanted by the lawn, showing that she wanted to stay there forever. Later, Kelvin discovered a room that had been transformed into a hot spring bath and took the opportunity to relax with a long, well-deserved bath. Afterwards, he fell into bed to rest, but suddenly he heard a familiar voice. It was Melfina, telling him that he had already accumulated enough experience and mana points to summon her. He stood up excitedly, recited the spell, and through a magic circle, the beautiful goddess Melfina appeared, as beautiful as his girlfriend. She asked him if he thought she looked pretty, and he jokingly replied that he had always wanted to squeeze a goddess's cheeks before going to sleep. At breakfast the next morning, Melfina was there with them, but no one could identify her until she revealed that she had been summoned by Kelvin the night before. Everyone was shocked to see a living goddess among them, but soon got used to it as she happily ate the cookies Eiffel had made. Kelvin wanted to know if he could call her by her real name since she was famous, but Melfina explained that many people named their daughters after goddesses to avoid drawing attention. Then, as a way of thanking him for having reincarnated her, she used her magic to draw a flower in the air, which floated to his chest. It was the grace of the goddess of reincarnation, granting him two special abilities that no one else in this world possessed. Kelvin listened eagerly to Melfina's explanation. The first ability was defensive and could be activated once a month to protect him from any fatal attack. He was happy because this gave him a margin for error, even if someone tried to catch him by surprise. Melfina smiled at his reaction and revealed that this was not the main ability. The real special ability was the power to summon his own heroes, something that surprised everyone, including Kelvin. Later that day, Sarah challenged Melfina to a friendly battle in the training room Gerard had prepared in the dungeon. The two began the fight with all their might, using their best skills and exchanging blows intensely. Gerard watched from a bench next to Luca, admiring their strength. Suddenly, Sarah activated a special ability that caused gauntlets to appear on her arms, launching an aggressive attack, while Melfina cast a spell to strengthen herself and counterattacked with a spear thrust. The attacks clashed hard, breaking Melfina's spear, who only smiled. Sarah noticed that her gauntlet had also shattered. The fight continued until Sarah gained the upper hand and forced Melfina to her knees. Gerard applauded the two for their excellent fight, while Sarah helped Melfina to her feet. After her bath, Melfina visited Kelvin, who was still trying to understand the rules of the world. He didn't understand why they needed to summon heroes to defeat the Demon Lord, since there should be enough S-rank adventurers to face this threat together. Melfina sneaked up behind him and made him swallow a piece of chocolate, while he asked if there wasn't a way to stop the Demon Lord from resurfacing. She explained that the Demon Lord's reincarnation was a truth of this world, a sort of natural order that could not be changed, a cruel cycle that repeated itself every few centuries. With the birth of a new demon lord, he might look like an ordinary demon, but he had two unique characteristics. First, the evil within him would automatically multiply, causing him to become completely evil even if he was good at first. Second, and even more powerful, was his ability to nullify all magic. Kelvin was shocked and asked how they could defeat him if he could cancel all magic. Melfina smiled and said that this was precisely why heroes came from another world, because they did not belong to this natural order, and their magic was different and could not be nullified by the Demon Lord. Kelvin asked if this meant that his own magic would work against the enemy, and she confirmed that it did. She went on to say that the title of hero was given to bring hope to people living in war-torn regions. Even so, Kelvin was still a little skeptical about summoning people from the ordinary world without asking for their consent, throwing them into a world full of monsters and demons, where they would have to risk their lives. Melfina understood his point and explained that he had two options. He could summon someone to this world or reincarnate them. He waited a little longer until Melfina announced that the selection process was complete. A shadowy figure appeared in the magic circle. The young woman looked around, confused and lost, but Kelvin calmly approached and assured her that she was safe. He then explained that he had summoned her to that place. She immediately cheered up, introduced herself as Ryan, and said that before arriving there, she had met an angel who had told her that she would soon become a heroine. Kelvin smiled and confirmed that it was true. Ryan began to cry with joy and hugged him, relieved to have been given a new chance at life. Exhausted, she fell asleep while crying. Kelvin watched Ryan with a look full of affection, but soon he too began to feel tired, as he had used almost all of his mana to summon her. Later that same night, Ryan woke up from her sleep still somewhat dazed, and slowly remembered that she had been reincarnated in a completely new world. Her mind returned to the last memories of the hospital, when she was run over by the furious Kun truck. Not even the doctors were able to save her. Her life was abruptly cut short. She left the mansion and was overjoyed as she gazed up at the night sky, where the stars shone brightly. Without thinking twice, she started running across the grass, but ended up tripping, as she was still not used to so much movement. Suddenly, Kelvin appeared, smiling at her, and told her that he had also been reincarnated into this world. He explained that, just like her, he had been deleted by Truck Kun and summoned to this new reality, but that his memories of his previous life were few and far between. He admitted that, at first, he also felt lost, without friends or allies, completely alone in a strange world. However, over time, he made several friends and began to consider this place his true home. He continued exploring and fighting monsters, until, before he knew it, he was already a rank A adventurer. Ryan wondered why that grown man seemed to be showing off to her, but she soon realized that, just like her, he had always wanted to live in a fantasy world, since she was a gamer who had never had contact with nature or real friendships. So when Truck Kun chose her to reincarnate, she felt surprised, but in a strange way, happy. She thanked Kelvin for summoning her to that place, and he responded with a smile, commenting that they both had black hair, something unusual in that world. Then he told everyone that they were brothers from a distant land called Alabama. Ryan felt happy to hear this, and was soon officially accepted into Kelvin's harem and group. The next morning, Kelvin gathered his entire group, including Ellie and Luca, and took them to the enchanted forest, as if it were a picnic. Ryan was extremely excited and ran everywhere, curious to discover every detail of that new world. Ellie and Luca asked the reason for the visit, and Kelvin explained that he had placed 2 golems to protect the gate of the house, but he wanted them to learn how to fight so that they could defend themselves, avoiding fear or feeling vulnerable if any danger arose. Meanwhile, Gerard defeated a monster, Clotho took care of another, and S, for some reason, punched a tree. Soon they began to bet on a competition to see who could hunt the most monsters and advance through the forest. Suddenly, Eiffel warned Kelvin that he felt a powerful monster approaching. Kelvin asked Melfina to take care of Luca and Ellie while he faced the threat. The monster appeared, a dark wolf, growling ferociously and preparing to attack. As soon as it jumped to attack, Kelvin used his gravity magic to throw it to the ground, immobilizing it. Calmly, he approached and waited for the wolf's HP to decrease before making a contract with the creature. The wolf was immediately sealed in Kelvin's Pokeball, becoming one of his allies. Afterwards, he summoned the wolf again, which quickly won the affection of the girls, who began to hug it. At that moment, Eiffel shouted that he saw ERD and his group approaching through the forest. Soon ERD appeared and was surprised to see Kelvin there. He asked what was happening, and Kelvin replied that they were having a picnic. ERD told him that his group had the chance to rise to B rank, but they needed to hunt many monsters in a short time to complete the challenge. ERD's group became envious, since Kelvin's wolf received more attention and affection than they had ever had. ERD asked his group to control themselves. Kelvin introduced the girls to ERD's group, but this only increased their resentment, and they ran out of the forest, while ERD tried to hold them back. Sometime later, Gerard, Sarah, and S returned from the forest and told them that they had seen ERD and his group there. Kelvin explained that they were taking the exam to increase their rank. Hearing this, everyone looked at them with a guilty expression. Kelvin asked what they had done, and Eiffel used his magic to search for monsters, but said that there were none in the forest. SRA smiled shyly and admitted that they had wiped out all the monsters in the area. Kelvin was horrified, because now ERD would not be able to get the promotion. He ran to the city and apologized to ERD, promising that he would tell Leo everything. ERD told him not to worry, and commented that Kelvin might already be ready for the S-rank exam. The next morning, Kelvin and Ryan bathed the dog so that he wouldn't be as dirty as he had been in the forest. Ryan mentioned that he could understand what the dog was saying, thanks to a special ability. Kelvin was surprised, as he had never heard of such an ability. Soon after, Gerard called Ryan to the dungeon so she could practice with her sword. Over the next few days, Ryan practiced fencing every day, went fishing with S, exercised with Luca, and went on adventures riding on the dog's back. She slept with the dog every night, which gave Kelvin and Melfina time to let loose. One night, Kelvin was awakened by a sudden movement and found S, Ryan, and the dog, while the rest of the group slept. Gerard was on guard at the door. S told Kelvin that she thought some suspicious men were surrounding the mansion during the night. Kelvin used his magic to locate them and realized that the strongest of them was level 26, which was relatively low. S asked if she should take care of them, but Kelvin told her to stay and sent Ryan, along with the dog, to face these weaklings. He explained that Ryan would have to fight many humans in this world and that this would be a test to measure her progress. Ryan accepted the challenge, and in exchange, Kelvin gave her magical vision and a special sword that he had forged himself. She came out dressed in her armor, accompanied by the dog, ready for combat. The first 2 invaders to enter the mansion were easily defeated. She killed one with her sword, while the dog took care of the other. Kelvin and S watched through the window as S commented that Ryan's sword technique could still be improved, but it was already good enough to learn S-rank fencing technique. Soon, all the invaders were defeated, and Ryan's first real mission was a success. She celebrated along with the dog. Kelvin ordered Chloe to clean up the mess, and S to check on Ryan, as he himself would deal with the enemies who were still hiding in the forest. There, he found the leader of the group waiting for his companions to return, but Kelvin appeared from behind and told them that they would never come back. The man was shocked, but Kelvin put on a somber expression and resolved the matter in his own way. The next morning, Kelvin went to Leo, who told him that the invaders had been arrested, and after questioning, they had discovered that they were all part of the military nation called Tron. Kelvin remembered this name, since the fat man he had defeated a while ago was also from Tron, and asked why that kingdom showed interest in him. Leo explained that Tryon had always wanted to control the entire continent for itself, and that recently several nearby kingdoms had reported the presence of Tayson soldiers on the border. He also told him that the thieves captured in Torad were working for the Tryon government, which basically wanted to scout the region to find strategic points for invasion. Leo also said that the neighboring kingdom, Gon, is ruled by King Beats, considered the strongest person in the eastern part of the continent, and that, for this reason, he himself requested that Kelvin and his group be sent to his empire. During the journey through the forest in the carriage, everyone seemed happy with this kind of rest, although Kelvin seemed a little worried about the exam. He explained that, in order to become an S-class adventurer, it was necessary to have the approval of 2 rulers. He already had the approval of the Queen of Torad, and the King of Gon, named Leon, had promised to approve him if he completed a mission. Everyone wanted to know why he was worried, so he explained that the king was very strong because he was also an S-class adventurer. The only reason they called Kelvin was because of Trion's connection to the situation. Isle and S reinforced that everyone needed to be very careful in this new region, as they could be surprised at any moment. As they were talking, an arrow flew through the air and stopped near the carriage. Kelvin quickly ran out to see what was happening and soon noticed several elves hiding in the trees, their bows pointed at them. Without hesitation, he produced a letter and explained loudly that he had been personally invited by the King of Gon and that he did not want to cause any trouble. At that moment, an elder from the village appeared, introduced himself as Nell, and apologized for the elves' reaction. He examined the letter, confirmed that it was genuine, and told them that they were waiting for Kelvin and his group to arrive. Then, looking at Isle, he called her Lumo, asking where she had been all these years, since everyone believed that Lumo had died. Kelvin soon clarified that Isle was not Lumo, but Ethel, a person who had been enslaved long ago. Nell then led them to a treehouse deep in the forest, where they all sat down to talk for a while. He apologized for mistaking Isle for Lumo, and stated that she looked very much like the elf who disappeared 2 decades ago. Kelvin asked Nell to tell him what had happened, as perhaps the story could be linked to Isle as well. Nell began to explain that, until 20 years ago, that part of the continent was a place of constant peace, and that the elves lived almost invisible to those outside the forest. But one sad day, they were attacked by the Fire Dragon King, one of the greatest dragon kings. He accused the villagers, saying that an elf had disrespected him, and demanded that the elf come forward, threatening to destroy the entire village if he did not. The villagers did not understand what the dragon was talking about, and then he began to burn the village without sparing anyone. Half of the elves died, and everything went up in flames. It was then that an elf named Lumo stood up and went to the dragon. She asked him to take out all his anger on her, so that the others could live. The dragon looked at her, but said that it was not she who had disrespected him. In fact, he had never smelled a woman and was frustrated by it. He took advantage of the situation and proposed to Lumo that she become his wife and accept being his prisoner, and that in this way, he would spare the rest of the village. Lumo accepted, and the dragon took her flying on its back. No one saw them after that moment. Kelvin asked what was happening now, since it seemed like everything had already been resolved. Nell explained that years later they found Lumo's dead body in the forest, and that they feared the dragon might return for revenge. Everyone looked at Isle, and Gerard asked if it was possible that Ethel was the daughter of the Dragon King and Lumo. However, Melfina called him a fool, saying that size had nothing to do with it, and that the Dragon King was definitely a virgin. She added that Ethel was half-elf, the daughter of a human and an elf, and suggested that perhaps the dragon had been betrayed by a human, which is why it became angry and killed Lumo. Kelvin suggested that they write this story on Tumblr. Nell mentioned that the problem at the moment was not the Dragon King, but rather enemies who were invading villages and kidnapping elves from time to time. These enemies were too weak to be stopped, and not even Gon's soldiers could help. Kelvin said not to worry, he would take care of it, and asked Nell if he could renovate the village, as he wanted to be like Bob the Builder. Nell agreed, and Kelvin began to prepare to take the village into the future. Later, as night fell and the moon lit up the sky, Trion soldiers advanced on Gon's territory accompanied by a massive horde of demonic beasts. These creatures seemed to be controlled by a special collar that the kingdom had acquired. They believed that Gon's army was full of cowards who would flee rather than fight, but the commander ordered them to press on, making noise to attract any Gon forces and eliminate them quickly. Suddenly, one of the soldiers was hit by an arrow, scaring the others, since they were still far from the elf village. Before they could react, they began to fall one by one, hit by arrows fired by someone invisible to them. It was then that we saw that the arrows came from Ethel, who had the help of Kelvin and the bow he had created for her. This bow could shoot very long distances and made no noise when fired. Kelvin had reinforced the village, turning it into a true fortress. He was in a watchtower helping Ethel take down the enemies. The walls were high and strong, surrounded by the mysterious mist that Melfina created, as well as a huge moat filled with water, enchanted with Sea's dark magic. All of this made the village an almost impossible place to invade. Gerard, Doggy, and Ryan were positioned outside the gates to make sure no one got through. Soon, an enemy soldier came running into the camp to tell the captain that they had been attacked and that most of the troops had been destroyed. The captain became furious and asked if the enemy army was from Gon or Torad. The soldier replied that it was just a group of adventurers, with 3 girls and a wolf, who easily destroyed his troops. The captain didn't believe it, but soon Ryan and Melfina came out of the forest and thanked the soldier for taking them to the commander. The soldier, frightened, ran away, and the captain understood that he needed to act quickly, deciding to use his ace up his sleeve. He picked up a conch shell and blew hard, producing a huge sound that awakened a giant monster in the forest. Ryan was surprised by the creature's size, while Melfina assessed that it was an S-class monster. She told Ryan to face the monster together with Doggy. At first, Ryan was unsure, but Melfina assured her that if they could defeat the beast, Ryan would finally be recognized as a true adventurer. The captain was shocked to see that only a girl and her dog were about to face their most powerful weapon. The monster threw a punch at Ryan, but she managed to dodge it and quickly advanced towards it. With a jump, she tried to hit the creature's head with her sword, but the blade broke on impact. The monster tried to attack her once more, but she dodged it nimbly. Unfortunately, the monster hit the ground hard, raising a cloud of dust and boulders that ended up injuring Ryan. She fell to the ground, feeling the pain, and realized that she needed to end the fight with a single perfect strike to win. Without hesitation, she ran towards the monster again, accompanied by Doggy. Clotho appeared and handed her 2 swords to help in the battle. Climbing onto the monster's body, Ryan, along with Doggy, delivered a quick and powerful strike that killed the creature. But before they could celebrate, the monster transformed, rising to reveal its final form, a massive beast covered in flames. The captain shouted orders for it to eliminate the enemy, while Gerard, Kelvin, and Ephil watched from a distance. Ephil looked worried for Ryan, but Kelvin reassured her that she could handle it. The monster tried to punch Ryan to knock her down, but she easily dodged it and climbed up the beast's body again. She delivered the same blow again, completely destroying the beast. The captain and his soldiers were shocked and fled, not believing that a small girl had defeated their strongest monster. From afar, Kelvin watched the scene proudly, while Ephil silently followed. Suddenly, Kelvin realized that a powerful attack was coming and quickly created a barrier to protect them. When the dust settled, he saw a man flying with his henchmen. The man congratulated Kelvin for blocking the attack and showed that he was indeed very strong. He introduced himself as Clive and soon noticed Zeal, his eyes shining at the sight of her. Wasting no time, he tried to use charm magic on her, but Kelvin intervened at the last second, casting a blast that knocked Clive away. Clive looked at Kelvin as if he was insignificant and asked what he wanted. This irritated Kelvin, who responded firmly, warning Clive to stay away because no one messes with the girls in his group. Kelvin decided to act carefully and used his magic to check Clive's status, discovering that he was level 91 and had abilities that only reincarnated people should have. He shouted, asking if Clive had been reincarnated, which surprised Clive, as it showed that Kelvin had a high enough rank to know this secret. Clive then realized that Kelvin was also reincarnated, but he didn't seem too worried. Knowing that the situation could quickly become dangerous, Kelvin asked Eiffel to come down from the tower and hide. When Clive saw her running away, he tried to yell for her to stop, but Kelvin used a huge gust of wind that blew Clive and his henchmen away. Seizing the moment, Kelvin dismantled the tower, transforming its remains into 4 giant spears ready to attack. As soon as Clive reappeared in the dust, Kelvin fired a spear, catching him by surprise. However, Clive's defense was so strong that he managed to deflect the spear. Clive admitted that it could have been dangerous if it weren't for his excellent defensive magic. But Kelvin replied that it wasn't over yet, and threw all 4 spears at the same time. The spears came from all directions, but Clive blocked them all with his magical barrier. Watching the fight, Kelvin tried using magical explosions, but nothing worked. Clive laughed and said that Kelvin was wasting his time and energy, stating that no physical or magical attack could pass through the barrier, and that everything that touched it was instantly destroyed. Even so, the spears were still intact because Kelvin's magic was too strong. So Clive simply pushed the spears away and told Kelvin to look back. Kelvin noticed an attack coming his way and blocked it with his staff, while using the other 3 spears to detect other enemies. It was then that he realized that all the girls seemed to be under Clive's control, enchanted by his magic, and he pushed them away. Clive ordered Kelvin to admit defeat, saying that he could never defeat him. Suddenly, a powerful bolt of lightning struck Kelvin's barrier, destroying it completely. Surprised, he looked down and saw a girl aiming a bow at Clive. Meanwhile, Kelvin summoned several golems and handed them spears, balancing the battle, but warned them not to hurt the girls. An intense fight began, as Kelvin and Clive faced off directly. Clive took his staff and prepared for the duel. Both began to fly high in the sky. Clive praised Kelvin's ability to keep up with him, but Kelvin was determined to show who was the fastest, challenging him. Clive launched a magical attack at Kelvin, who quickly dodged it and responded with a magical beam, which was blocked at the last moment. The fight in the air, which seemed to be just a duel between wizards, soon turned into an intense aerial combat, reminiscent of a battle between ancient airplanes, with quick maneuvers and blasts of magic flying in all directions. Clive seemed to have the upper hand, chasing Kelvin, who dodged most of the attacks with ease. Suddenly, they began flying dangerously close to the golems fighting below. Clive continued to attack, nearly hitting Kelvin's allies. Worried, Kelvin shouted for him to stop, but Clive ignored him and kept going, forcing Kelvin to make a maneuver to protect the girls. They climbed even higher into the sky, while Clive mocked Kelvin, saying that he cared too much about the people of that world, that it was not their place, and that there was no point in caring. This angered Kelvin, who thought about all the relationships he had built there. Preparing for the final confrontation, Clive activated his barrier, while Kelvin prepared to use one of his most devastating attacks. The clash between them happens high up in the sky, causing a huge and destructive explosion. Clive soon realizes that his magical barrier did not hold up, it was broken. At the same time, Kelvin feels the staff slip from his hands because of the violent collision. Clive still ends up with a scratch on his face, but at that moment, it seems like everything inside him is out of control. Like someone who is having the worst day of the month, he loses his cool and starts screaming, full of rage, promising to destroy everything around him. He begins to concentrate in S-rank magic, something so powerful that it seems like a natural disaster, and the entire sky turns a frightening purple color. The people of the village watch everything in fear, including Kelvin, who understands very well the danger that is about to happen. A strong wind begins to rise in the sky, leaving everyone terrified. Kelvin wastes no time. He descends to the top of a nearby mountain, pulls a new staff from his pocket, and begins charging up intense magical energy. The energy seems to boil, ready to explode, as Clive prepares to launch his devastating attack. But something surprising happens. Kelvin's staff transforms into a magical sword. They face each other head-on, causing an immense collision of power. But in the end, Kelvin manages to win. Breathing heavily, Kelvin looks at his enemy lying on the ground, injured. Clive is powerless, and his legs are cut off. With firm steps, Kelvin walks towards Clive, ready to deliver the final blow and end the fight. However, before he can, someone appears to save Clive. Kelvin turns around and sees a mechanical monster carrying Clive, along with a man wearing glasses. The man introduces himself as Tristan, and explains that he is one of the generals of the Tricon army, in addition to having been responsible for planning the attack on the villages. Curious, Kelvin realizes that the teleportation he saw during the fight is a special ability of a summoner, and becomes interested in learning more about Tristan. Tristan admits that they were defeated that day, and that they will retreat, but he warns that this encounter will not be the last, and that they will probably face each other again very soon. After saying this, he disappears, and the battle finally comes to an end. Everyone looks for Kelvin to see if he is okay, and he replies that everything is fine, as he begins to float back to the village. Yfil, very excited, tells Nell about the victory, who is relieved and happy to know that the village has been saved. Wasting no time, she orders a great banquet to be prepared for the heroes. When Kelvin arrives on the outskirts of the village, he sees Melfina, Sy, and Rio competing in a race, with Rio winning the race. He praises everyone for their effort and contribution during the battle. Later that night, a lively party takes place to celebrate the victory. After a while, Kelvin climbs to the top of a hill to have some alone time, but Yfil, who is inseparable from him, follows him and starts talking. Shortly after, the rest of the group appears along with a little elf, who immediately hugs Kelvin affectionately. Then, to everyone's surprise, the little elf starts laughing in a strange way and reveals herself to be none other than King Leon of this kingdom. Confusion takes over the group, but he explains that he has a magical item that allows him to change his appearance whenever he wants. He used this form to hide and observe Kelvin during the fight, and now he is proud to announce that Kelvin has passed the exam. This means that he has officially become an S-rank adventurer. King Leon tells them that a grand ceremony will soon take place in the kingdom to make Kelvin's ranking official, followed by a special tournament between other S-rank adventurers. This makes Kelvin excited. After all, he will finally be participating in a real tournament. With the battle suspended for now, everyone heads down the hill, ready to rest well and face the challenges that still lie ahead.